All right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. We are in the thick of the craziest part of the offseason. We're seeing all these deals reportedly. Obviously, nothing is official until the new league year kicked off, which of course would be Wednesday afternoon, which by the time you are watching this video, it has probably passed. But there's been all courses of deals flowing around over the past couple of days, and lost in the hustle and bustle was a really smart move by Detroit Lions. I think not enough people are paying attention to. We'll break that down in just a second. But first, I'm Nick, he's Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, without further ado, let's jump into this Lions move that I think not enough people are paying attention to. Let's get into the report first, courtesy of ESPN, then we'll talk about it more with the data on the other side. From the report, the Detroit Lions have agreed to a 3-year, $48 million contract with free agent cornerback DJ Reid, who most of you are probably very well familiar with by now. Sources told ESPN's Adam Schefter as they move quickly to replace starting cornerback Carlton Davis III. This was Reid's second foray into free agency. In 2022, he signed a 3-year, $33 million deal with the New York Jets. It seemed like a big contract for a player who had only started one full season with the Seahawks in 2021, but he quickly established himself as one of the Jets' better defensive players. All right, so this move just seemed like a sort of a replacement of Carlton Davis, who took $18 million per year moving on from the Detroit Lions. But it's almost the perfect replacement. I mean, this is something we've almost never seen before. Let's go right into this chart real quick just to dive into it. Then I'll throw it over to you, Miles, for your analysis. So here you have age, APY in terms of per year annualized, their contract, their PFF coverage grade, and their PFF tackling grade between DJ Reid and Carlton Davis. And you can see on the screen in front of you, they are essentially identical. Carlton Davis got $2 million per year more than DJ Reid for the Detroit Lions and has a tiny, slightly better PFF coverage grade. That's it. This is incredible stuff by Brad Holmes. It's almost impossible for you to get a direct replacement of a player without having to reset the market and pay a lot more. If a player leaves and you are just able to replace them with a discounted salary, usually that player is significantly worse. Somehow the Lions pulled off a really exceptional and extraordinary job here. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Detroit fans in the comment section below, grade the decision to let Carlton Davis walk and to sign DJ Reid. I think they have to be taken hand in hand. Do you love the Lions' approach, especially now that you've seen this data? Give it an A. Do you hate it? Give it an F. Or you kind of wait and see, maybe to C. Grade this overall decision-making process and the move and the execution by Detroit Lions in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on this entire process here, this move specifically for the Lions?
Yeah, Nick, I think, like you said, this is like us. It's hard to call it a steal because it's not really a steal. They replaced a player with another player at a pretty good contract. But what they did here was get a guy and bring him in for a skosh less money than they would have kept Carlton Davis for. And the guy's exactly as good, if not. And I would say there's a couple things I want to bring up. Maybe even a little bit better, a little bit more reliable throughout his whole career than a guy like Carlton Davis. DJ Reid has been the epitome of consistency throughout his entire career. He's been mid 70s to high 70s PFF grade from 2018 to 2024 across the board. The guy is incredibly consistent. He's very good in coverage. He's a great run defender. He's had some really, really high years in the high 80s, 89.7 in 2020, 85.8 in 2021 as his run defense grades go. This guy just seems like a very, very smart move, a smart replacement by the Lions here. And I love what he was able to do in New York when he was with the Jets. Obviously, playing on the opposite side of Sauce Gardner, DJ Reid. They kind of picked on him a little bit, but he did very good when they were going away from Sauce Gardner. In the Jets, the scheme they run, the ability, they don't really switch sides with corners all too often. So DJ Reid is a guy who he had to stay on teams' number one receivers a lot of the time, and he did a very good job doing that. I believe he only allowed an 80.4 QBR rating when target, which I believe is the 19th best in the NFL of all the. I think I can't remember correctly, but I think it was 77 corners that were graded in that statistic. That's pretty dang good if you ask me. I think this guy is a great pickup for the Lions. It's a smart deal. It's a fair deal for the player, and I think you get a really great replacement in a guy out of DJ Reid. I don't think you could have possibly done any better. Get a guy, he's consistent, he's good, you know what he's capable of, you've seen him do some really good things, and you actually get him for a little bit less money than the guy you let walk. This is absolutely the perfect situation the Lions have walked themselves into. And I think that they did a fantastic job here in replacing Carlton Davis.
Yeah, especially when you consider Carlton Davis, as good as he is, the biggest issue for him is injuries. Can he be available? The old saying, the best ability is availability. As much as his, PFF grades are on the same level of DJ Reed, a little bit better in the coverage department. If you don't play, if you miss a quarter of the games, if you miss most of the season, or even if you miss one game and the other guy starts all of them, right? Whatever the relationship is, it takes a real notch against that. Because if you're not playing, you're not helping your team win games. And Lions fans, you're very well aware of the fact that as sometimes as great as it is to have a lot of talent, a lot of depth, if everyone's hurt, it sometimes doesn't matter. And I think that was a big part of the Lions' decision-making process to let Davis walk and to bring in a guy like DJ Reed, who I think has a little bit better history. Obviously, no one's ever perfect in the injury department because there's a luck factor that goes into it. Football's a violent sport, obviously. But I think Carlton Davis's most recent injury concerns made DJ Reed the better option for that scenario. And look, I'm just going to highlight how rare this is. Again, normally what happens if you let a veteran player walk, you usually have to replace him one of three ways. One, you either have to reset the market and overpay to get a player of his caliber. That's what normally happens. We see that in the NFL really all of the time. Number two, you have to get a cheaper veteran who's 35, who's on the downside of his career, maybe on a cheap team friendly deal, who's very injury prone and has lost about 2 or 3 steps. Or you have to take a flyer on a brand new guy, a young guy who doesn't have a lot of experience, right? And you don't really know what you're going to get. The Lions, of course, and win now mode, both of those two scenarios, going the vet who's lost 2 steps and injury prone, and a young guy who doesn't have a lot of experience, that's not the strategy you want to take. You need to get a veteran, and they went out and got it done without overpaying. In fact, they got him at a little bit of a discount when you consider the fact that Davis got 18 million per year. This is just a phenomenal job by Brad Holmes. I know a lot of people have question marks about the Lions with their two coordinators, Glenn and Johnson, leaving. What's going to happen, going forward in terms of having to pay all these people? They're seeing some offensive line depth, getting a little bit older in some positions, right? What is going to happen here? They're going to have to pay Hutchinson. How's that going to work out with the depth on the roster? At a certain point, we have to realize, and it was like this way with the Patriots, it's like the way with the Chiefs, it's like this way with the Philadelphia Eagles. If you have smart leadership at the top of the organization, all of these so-called problems eventually fade away, right? You can be in the best scenario, but if you have bad leadership at the top of the organization, no matter how great things look, it'll eventually collapse. And we see this all the time. You look at the Cincinnati Bengals are a great example of it. They literally have walked into a gold mine of elite talent. They had one great run to a Super Bowl appearance, phenomenal for them, another conference championship. But their leadership at the top seems to be struggling right now to deal with their incredible amount of talent, acquiring new guys. Drafting's been an issue at times for them too. It just isn't working out for the Bengals. Their leadership is nowhere nearly as good as the Lions, especially Brad Holmes, who, no matter what challenges come Detroit's way in terms of keeping the roster, elevating the talent, working around the strategies in the NFL and the competition, there seems to be almost no one better than him. Everyone talks about Howie Roseman for the Philadelphia Eagles, and deservedly so. They won the Super Bowl. But I honestly think Brad Holmes is right at that level. This is a phenomenal job by him. But Miles, I will throw this over to you in terms of a question here to kind of tilt this conversation a little bit. Obviously, this was a good move by the Detroit Lions, but what's one move you think they still need to do? What's an area they still need to address? Because they still got a lot of cap space to deal with. Or do you think you should sit on that cap space, roll it over into the future, and deal with some of these contract situations later?
So Nick, I think one thing we said when we diagnosed the Lions earlier this year is where can they upgrade? And we said, well, they're pretty good everywhere. It's a dang good team. The injuries being, the factor here, it's kind of hard to say they need to upgrade anywhere. And so I think one thing we said was corner, definitely somewhere they need to upgrade. Obviously, DJ Reed, getting him in the fold, I think it's going to be good. It'll help the development of a guy like Terrion Arnold. You look at what else they were able to do. I think we talked about maybe the other two options were interior defensive line and linebacker. They retained two linebackers and Derek Barnes and Zeke Turner, so they've got some good depth there. They've got some guys at the linebacker position that'll be good. And then as far as the edge, they re-signed Marcus Davenport as well. So I think they're pretty good. I don't see any glaring issues on this team. It's just little upgrades here, little upgrades there. Is this a team that needs to do that? I don't know. I think you can potentially look into rolling that money forward. Everything looks pretty good right now. I think overall, injuries being the biggest factor as of last year, this team looks as good, if not just a slightly bit better coming into this season. And I like that team from last year. I think they were Super Bowl contenders without the injuries. So I like this Lions team. I like what we're seeing here. I don't think they really need to go out and just overpay for somebody ridiculous and get a bad contract on their books, I think they're pretty good where they're at right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I just pulled up their depth chart here, trying to look and just see maybe there's something we've missed, something we're not seeing. And look, maybe you can upgrade over a Meek Robertson, right? Maybe get another corner. Maybe you go out and try and take a flyer on Rasul Douglas or Asante Samuel Jr., right? You got the cap space to do that. Maybe depth on the O line, right? Maybe you try and bring in a veteran. You let Zadarius Smith walk. Maybe you bring in Demarcus Lawrence of the Cowboys, see if he has anything left in the tank. And there are options there, but they don't feel like moves the Lions have to make. And I think that's the important thing here. And again, it's the credit to Brad Holmes. Right now, they're in a situation, they've addressed all the glaring red flags. They're obviously a championship caliber team. Now they have the cap space and the flexibility to figure out where they want to go next. Do they want to wait for an opportunity to bring in another veteran to make this roster even better for 2025? Or do they roll the dollars over into the future? Maybe they start working on extensions for some of their younger players now. Maybe we see Aiden Hutchinson contract talks heat up and things like that. I think this is where the Lions are heading. I think they're in a really strong position going forward. And I think a lot of credit has to be given to Brad Holmes here. I'm just going to pull up the Lions cap space just to make sure everyone understands where the Lions are at. So this is one of the best teams in football. We all understand that. And they have $52 million in cap space right now, right? That's the numbers you expect for a team that won like 5 games last year. They've got 52 million bucks, and they should have honestly been to the NFC Championship game. I think they would have if it weren't for the rash of injuries. They are absolutely loaded. They're absolutely stacked. I think the big question mark for me is going forward, how much money will the Aiden Hutchinson contract set them back? I think at this point, maybe that's the move they do. Maybe they lock him down now, maybe try and beat the Cowboys to Micah Parsons' deal so you can get Hutchinson at the, in between maybe Max Crosby and Garrett, that $35 to $40 million range. Because if Parsons comes in at, say, 40, 41, 42, now you have to beat that. I think that's the next domino to drop personally. The Lions can front load that contract if they want because they have the cap space. But again, just to end this here, they're in such a strong position. This was such a good job bringing in Reid for Davis. I think honestly, because of the health concerns, it's an upgrade for the Lions. It's a better situation. And credit 100% needs to go to Brad Holmes.